Hello, I've been meaning to make this video for a long time, and now that we just passed the shootings at Tree of Life Synagogue in Pittsburgh, I decided that this is the time to do it. We've been having a very important conversation about free speech in the United States. Unfortunately, we haven't been having this conversation as much as we should have on social media. Unfortunately, a lot of people believe that if you silence people like this murderer and other anti-Semites, other racists, other people with bad ideas, you will somehow improve the situation. And it's obvious to me that this is not true at all. And one of the greatest examples of why this is wrong is in fact Nazi Germany, which many people misunderstand exactly what happened there. In future videos, I hope to address a lot of the various things that anti-Semites talk about. For example, I've been seeing this word pill pool being used by all sorts of alt-right figures, all sorts of anti-Semitic figures, and it's really funny to see how the people who know very little about Judaism but have gone down the anti-Semitic rabbit hole know certain things that the vast majority of Jews have never heard about. For example, the word pilpul or the word metzitza or any of these weird things. They know all the various factions in Zionism a lot better than the vast majority of Jews in the world, certainly in the United States, know these words, concepts, people, and parts of Jewish history. And unfortunately, trying to silence these people does not work. It most definitely does not work. And to prove that to you, let's look at what happened during Nazi Germany. This article is from The New Yorker, February 14th, 2015, and it is an interview with Fleming Rose, the foreign editor of the Danish daily newspaper that became widely known for publishing the cartoons of Muhammad in 2005. And Fleming Rose wrote a book called The Tyranny of Silence, which discusses these issues and brought up a fact that most people who talk about free speech issues unfortunately don't know, which is very important. I'll read this paragraph for you. Researching my book, I looked into what actually happened in the Weimar Republic. I found that, contrary to what most people think, Weimar Germany did have hate speech laws, and they were applied quite frequently. The assertion that Nazi propaganda played a significant role in mobilizing anti-Jewish sentiment is, of course, irrefutable. But to claim that the Holocaust could have been prevented if only anti-Semitic speech and Nazi propaganda had been banned has little basis in reality. I would actually say it has no basis in reality, but Fleming Rose is actually being very charitable. Back to the interview. Leading Nazis such as Joseph Goebbels, Theodor Fritsch, and Julius Streicher were all prosecuted for anti-Semitic speech. Streicher served 2 prison sentences. Rather than deterring the Nazis and countering anti-Semitism, the many court cases served as effective public relations machinery, affording Streicher the kind of attention he would never have found in a climate of a free and open debate. In the years from 1923 to 1933, Der Stürmer, Streicher's paper, a newspaper, was either confiscated or editors taken to court on no fewer than 36 occasions. The more charges Streicher faced, the greater became the admiration of his supporters. The courts became an important platform for Streicher's campaign against the Jews. In the words of a present-day civil rights campaigner, pre-Hitler Germany had laws very much like the anti-hate laws of today, and they were enforced with some vigor. As history so painfully testifies, this type of legislation proved ineffectual on the one occasion where there was a real argument for it. So again, let's see what happened, and this is really important. Before the Nazis came into power in Germany, there were hate speech laws enforced in Weimar Germany. And what happened was these people, like Joseph Goebbels, right? The one person everybody brings up, oh, do you want to let Joseph Goebbels of today speak out? And what happened in suppressing the speech, and again, I think Fleming Rose is being way too charitable here. What happened was that these people used their persecution in order to further their speech. And G.R.R. Martin, again, he said this, the quote from his book, when you rip a man's tongue out, you don't prove that he's a liar, you prove that you're afraid of what he might say. Yes, there are anti-Semites out there who will never be convinced. There are people out there who will always harbor their anti-Semitism. And speaking with them does no good. But there are also people out there with genuine questions. And the fake Voltaire quote we hear so many times regarding to see who rules over you, see who you cannot criticize. It doesn't matter whether Voltaire said that or not. It matters that that is an idea that people find convincing, and I think to some extent is convincing. Being able to criticize, and we found this in the United States so many times, in human history so many times, persecuting and prosecuting people for their beliefs doesn't work. And the history of anti-Semitism is actually partially the history of that. Trying to persecute Jews out of existence did not work. Contrast that to the Jews of Kaifeng, the Jews living in China hundreds of years ago, who melted into the surrounding community. People have ideas. Sometimes they're very idiotic and obviously wrong ideas. And when you silence these ideas, these people cannot get feedback. They cannot receive answers. So when people talk about the Jewish question, I have no problem with Jewish questions. I invite anybody who has any questions about Judaism to go ahead and write and comment below, and I will answer your Jewish questions. Troll, not troll, I don't care. Go ahead and ask, and I will go ahead and answer you. Because if there is a genuine question to be asked, then it does need to be answered. And yes, I will talk about all the things that many of the anti-Semites want, and the Holocaust deniers actually would prefer that their assertions be whispered, that they wouldn't have to explain things and to deal with the answers that we can give. I think it is a very unfortunate environment we have right now, where people are not willing to answer the difficult questions. Yes, there are difficult questions out there about anti-Semitism, about racism, about all kinds of things. And if you are not willing to answer those questions, these ideas will fester. I think it is a horrible thing that Gab has been silenced. One of the things that very clearly shows the idiocy of anti-Semitism and the idiocy of these alt-right, anti-Semitic, racist, Holocaust-denying, silly people is when they do get to talk their nonsense, other people can understand their nonsense. They start defending Hitler for their supposed, and the things they say end up becoming so silly. For example, no, Hitler didn't. Hitler made friends with the Jews. Hitler liked the Jews. Hitler was a horrible person, not because he prosecuted or persecuted Jews, but because he didn't do that. And a lot of things like that these confused, there's a reason why anti-Semitism is not coherent. It can't be coherent. It doesn't make sense. And when you don't allow people to show what is silly, stupid, and self-contradictory in anti-Semitism, you make the situation worse. So I've been meaning to do this for a while. This is something that this is not new. I remember when I first went to undergrad, there was a guy who would stand in front of the college entrance, the main entrance where all the students would come in, with this sign that said, psychology is tainted with lies in Judaism, right? And he would stand there every day, and every year the new freshmen coming into the college, and this was before the internet was really a thing, new college freshmen would come in and start asking questions about the Holocaust. And we involved Jews had to answer these questions on a regular basis. And there was that whole debate. Should we talk to these people? Should we not talk to these people? Are we giving legitimacy to these people by answering their questions, by debating them? Look, if you are not willing to answer these questions, they will keep on coming up. As I hope to discuss in the future when talking about various problems of anti-Semitism, these are perennial questions. These are questions that young people will have until answers are given, that anti-Semites will be whispering in people's ears, and unless you're willing to confront these ideas, you are going to make it worse. Again, I cannot stress this enough. The prosecutions for anti-Semitic speech in the Weimar Republic failed spectacularly. They were used as proof of the power of the Jews, as proof of the veracity of what these people say, because they said something which is, I believe, a completely valid argument. If what we say, if what our claims are lies, are not, are answerable, why won't you just answer us? Why do you have to shut us down? And honestly, I've been wanting to do this for a while, and unfortunately on Saturday, the horrible events where 11 people were brutally murdered, and so many other people, the injuries, physical and psychological, because this was an act of terrorism, which will affect the members of that synagogue and Jewish people in the world over. It's just, if the answer is not stopping the speech, once speech becomes impossible as a way of settling our differences, once talking things over, once majority rule, once the ballot box and consensus becomes impossible, then war and physical violence becomes the only solution. I cannot stress how horrible I think it is that these conversations are being stifled, that people are afraid to answer the questions, and I will answer all the questions. Yes, I can explain the Mitzitza. Yes, I can explain why the numbers from the World Almanac. I can explain the many questions that people have in the regarding the Holocaust, and some of the things which these Holocaust revisionists bring up is true. Could the numbers be lower than 6 million? Yes. 6 million was always an estimate. Nobody ever thought that there were exactly 6 million, not 5,999,999 or 6,000,001. Nobody ever thought the number was exact, and these numbers can never be exact. How many people were murdered under Mao? How many people were murdered under Stalin? The figures could be as low as 10 million, as high as 100 million, and any historical fact. You know, we've gotten to the point where we think that people in history recorded things the same way we do today, where there are recording devices and there are computers and there are databases. And, you know, to some extent, it's funny how little people think there is documentation of the Holocaust. There's this great book, IBM and the Holocaust. Yeah, there's actually a lot more documentation than people realize. And at the same time, they get all kinds of bent out of shape when you talk about 6 million and maybe it was 5 million. The number of names in Yad Vashem are about 4,500,000. And is it possible that not all of those 4,500,000 were killed? Yes, I believe that that is possible. It is, I believe. So these things are up for debate. Historians do question various things of the Holocaust. Jews certainly argue over what it means, what Zionism means, how Zionism, political Zionism, religious Zionism, the question of both secular Jews and Gentiles in Israel, the Jewish nature of the state of Israel. These questions, there are questions that do need to be asked. Criticism of Judaism is not verboten. It cannot be verboten. Criticism of the Jewish community is not verboten and cannot be verboten. Of Jewish practices, of individual Jews. Yes, I actually believe that there are many good and decent criticisms of George Soros. Not every criticism of George Soros is anti-Semitic. Not every criticism of the State of Israel or Zionism is anti-Semitic. And I think that the people who do try to put these people outside the realm of fair criticism or questioning the facts of the Holocaust. Look, we know that the soap thing never happened. The soap thing did not happen. The lampshades thing is, at best, a unique thing that one person maybe did. Yes, looking at history is fine. Criticizing individuals is fine. Criticizing religions, ideologies is fine. Talking about these various things needs to be done. And unfortunately, we are not having the debate about free speech that we should be having, and we're not having a fact-based debate about debate. Joseph Goebbels was prosecuted and fined for his anti-Semitic speech. It did not work. Are we going to repeat the mistakes of history again? Censorship has never worked. Censorship, whether it's the Barbra Streisand effect or it's simply giving validity to something by ripping people's tongues out, by showing fear of ideas. I am just so frustrated that Gab is down now, that the people who, like that crazy man, why do you think he had a sign that said psychology is tainted with lies in Judaism? Yes, he had a problem with Jews, but he had more of a problem with psychology because he was crazy. And anybody, who stands day after day, and for years, this man was standing in front of the university with these signs. And year after year, day after day, we had to educate the people who he would talk to. And this is a perennial thing. Education will never cease. You will have to educate people over and over. As long as we're having children, we will have to educate people about the truths regarding the Holocaust and the lies, the questions that people have about Judaism. And, that's fine. There is nothing wrong with having questions. Judaism is very much about asking questions. When I was in yeshiva, the rabbis didn't answer my questions with, "Oh, no, you can't ask this question." They would answer my questions oftentimes with "ask better." What does ask better mean? It means ask a more difficult question, ask even a harder question. And we would bring up the hardest questions we could think of. And we were trained, we were taught to ask difficult questions. That is how you educate people. That is how you fight anti-Semitism. That is how you fight hatred. That's how you bring forth a better humanity, is not by silencing questions, by improving the questions and giving even better answers. So please, if you have any questions, and I welcome all the questions, any questions you may have, please ask away, and I will answer them. I don't believe that there are any questions that cannot be answered. If I believed there were criticisms and questions about Judaism that cannot be answered, I would not identify as a Jew. And I welcome the questions. I welcome any question you have. We must be willing to speak freely. We must be willing to discuss things. We must be able to criticize. And I just find even more distressing. I realize after what happened at the Tree of Life and the horrific massacre that happened there, many people are asking, how do we stop these things from happening? And I think the number one way we can stop these things from happening is by answering when they ask about the Jewish question. Answer Jewish answers for the Jewish question. That's fine. Because once we stop speaking, all that's left is violence. And we cannot go down this road again. Look at what happened once again in the years from 1923 to 1933. Der Stürmer, Streicher's newspaper, was either confiscated or editors taken to court on no fewer than 36 occasions. The more charges Streicher faced, the greater became the admiration of his supporters. Censorship has never worked. I am not making this argument just on philosophical bases. Pragmatically, censorship does not work. We need to answer these questions, and I'm willing to answer these questions. Go ahead, ask away in the comments, and I will make a video regarding each one, even though we will have to go down the rabbit hole and explain things that the vast majority of Jews have never even heard about. I would have a very difficult time believing that even 20% of the Jews in the world have heard of the word pilpul. But so many of these anti-Semites are talking about pilpul. It's become a word on the alt-right that's used completely outside of the Jewish context, which is hilarious. So yes, ask away, and I will answer away. You know, these questions have answers. Your questions about the Holocaust have answers. What the Holocaust deniers say can be answered, and we need to answer them because this is not a cliche. The answer to bad speech is more speech. I welcome your questions. Please go ahead, ask away, and I will answer you.